That's, you make money, you make a little of money, but you're building your network. So that's Google. We talk about Google ads, Facebook ads, and then Yelp and Thumbtack.
LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I mean, I would think that.
Oh, LinkedIn.
Yeah.
LinkedIn. I have not met anybody yet that runs successful ads on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is good in networking. I think it's good to make those connections, and you can make business like that. But there's no need to run ads. I think if you buy the LinkedIn Premium, you can make this money work for you much better than running any ads on LinkedIn.
That's interesting though, because you might think that, especially for headshots, if you think like people who are on LinkedIn already must see a need for better headshots for their profile
Well,
pictures on
don't
LinkedIn.
get me wrong. I get a lot of business through LinkedIn, but not because of ads on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn, comparatively to like Google, are much more expensive. Yeah. So definitely build a network on LinkedIn, and reach out to people. Find like businesses in your area and start reaching out to them. But at the end, don't sell. Don't be like the 99% of messages you receive on LinkedIn. That's just basically sell on the first message.
Oh man, how many messages do I get every day of people offering me their photo editing services?
Yeah. So it's make the connection and don't sell yet. Just make the connection. So comment. Yeah, like on LinkedIn, just comment on other people's posts, build that connection, and reach out then. And I usually actually, most of my leads actually from LinkedIn are reaching out to me first that they need it.
Here's a question to you in terms of LinkedIn. This is I'm just asking this purely out of interest, because I don't really know very much about LinkedIn, to be honest with you. What's the main difference between the LinkedIn Premium paid for version and the just the regular free version?
You can send messages to people that are not your contacts on LinkedIn. So that's the big difference. And then you can make very advanced searches of people. And then the search on LinkedIn is actually very powerful. So, for example, if you want to find C-level executives for construction companies in your area that have, I don't know, between 50 and 100 people in the company, and they have been in this role for for at least a year, you can easily find those people, and those are the ones that you can reach out to say like, hey, how can I help you?
Right. That's interesting. That's actually very interesting. Yeah. All right, let's talk a little bit about Google Ads, because I know you're very very knowledgeable when it comes to Google Ads. Let's say you've started your business, you've decided, okay, well, I've knocked on all the doors, now it's time to go digital, and I've decided to run Google Ads. What's the first thing you do? I mean, because I know, like with Facebook ads, for example, I know from my own experience, Facebook ads seem to work quite well when you're promoting a particular, like let's say an event, like a mini session headshot event or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know really how useful Facebook ads are on a constant basis. But when it comes to Google ads, and I see those, whenever I Google anything, I see the sponsored ads on the top of it, on the top of the page. So. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it occurs to me that that's more of a kind of a, you want to create some continuity with that. Is that how you do it, or do you do it? Do you run Google Ads over for a specific time period, or how does that actually work?
Well, I run Google Ads nonstop.
Right.
Yeah. So the only the only day I'm skipping is Saturday. On Saturday, I don't run for headshot at least. I noticed that the response on Google Ads on Saturdays is the lowest. Sunday is good, especially Sunday afternoon, because I think people start to think about their job again on Sunday afternoon. So they actually oh shoot, I need to do the headshots, and that's the time that they have, right? And then I run on Monday to Friday. So I run those ads nonstop. And when you run Google Ads, the big mistakes that I saw people make on Google Ads is, one, they don't put any offer or any reason for people to like take any action with them, right? So they run a Google ad and then they point them to their homepage with fingers crossed that they're going to book a session, when they come to my homepage, right? But the problem is that you paid for that visit, right? And when somebody comes to your homepage, yes, you can make your homepage really transactional, or like, there's only one thing you can do on your homepage, but I would say big majority, 99% of people, when we go to their homepage, there's more than one thing to do on the homepage, right? So that's why when the landing pages come into play, and landing pages are basically dedicated pages, whether it's within your website or on a separate subdomain, that the main goal is to convert that person that came to that page to give you their information for whatever value you provide them, right? You can give them some guides, books, you can give them a special discount, whatever you decide to do. Sorry, the value has to be there for them to give you the information, and there should be only one, call to action, or one thing they can do, on that page. So that means no menu, right? So the big thing, no menu. They cannot navigate anywhere else. There's only the button. The button should be only one thing they can do with the button, and so to fill out the form to get whatever you offer them. The logo should not take you to the homepage of the website, etc. And then basically it's all information that you can think of, that the visitor may need on that one page. And because when they come to your page, they don't know you, they don't know who they are. It doesn't matter how famous you are, or you think known in the area. People most of the time, they don't know who you are, right? So focus on the value, on the benefits of what you offer, not just the features, but the benefits, and then add some social proof. So like, if you have reviews, the reviews are so important. So put the social proof, and yeah, that's basically the foundation, the first part of any advertisements, that you should be doing, right? There should be some reason for them to, to be interested in working with you, or even like get the information, the lead map. They don't even have to want to work with you at that point. If you provide, I don't know, for family sessions, let's say you provide a guide how to dress your whole family, right? So that's not just random clothes, but there's some, feel to it, right? Or and where to get those clothes, right? How to, you can even put specific links to like, different clothes that works, together, right? So that's the good value to a client. Like for example, for headshots, we have a campaign where we offer 50% off on the session fee, right? So they have to sign up to receive the coupon code, and that's how it works. And then once they sign up, the following up is extremely important. You cannot just, send one email and say, or just book here. You have to nurture that lead, and sometimes it takes a month, sometimes it takes 6 months, sometimes it takes 12 months, but you have to stay in touch with that person.
So let's say you're offering a guide, like on my website, you can download the Ultimate Headshot Guide. Basically, it gives you all the information that you need. So once somebody's downloaded that guide, and of course, in exchange, they would punch in their email address. So now you have a list of email addresses. So what you're saying is you're recommending to stay in touch with those people, the warm leads, I suppose, in order to nurture them to eventually pull the trigger.
Yeah, you have
and
to tell them about yourself. That one of the email, you can send emails with some additional reviews or about the process, how it works. Obviously, first, if you offer a guide, obviously the first email will be with the guide, right? And then after that, you can nurture those emails with tips. How, even if they don't go with you, to provide them tips so that they know you're an expert, right? You know what you're doing. That you have an experience, and just Like our chain is like, I think like 25 emails that we sent in 14 or 15 months. But yeah, so we have it automated, obviously, and we have automated the emails, we have automated the text messages. So everything is done automatically, and if somebody responds, then I step in, or my studio manager steps in, and just responds or call them. When they sign up for the special, actually, beside the text message and email, we call them as well, and we call them like right away. So that follow up is extremely important.
I've actually just realized this. This is exactly what happened to me the other day. Only a few days ago, I was trying to find storage. I was trying to find a storage space basically for my stepson who's coming back from university, and he's got too much shit basically. So we need to get some storage. And of course, I've been on the net. I've been comparing storage spaces and prices and stuff, and I pretty much immediately had people call me back, asking me about my requirements. That's
the first, and the certain businesses, they call more than others. I think photographers don't call enough. So that, if you want to differentiate yourself, you just call, and ask them, about what they need, how we can help them.
So that's a really interesting strategy. So with Google Ads, for example, are you sort of recommending to have just generally a particular offer going on Google Ads, like let's say 50% off or 25% off the session fee or something like that?
I think the offers on Google Ads is pretty powerful, but it has to, it cannot be like 10%. It has to be something significant. The ultimate guide to headshots maybe work, may not work. Okay, because when somebody looking for headshots, they don't, they want to make the process as easy for themselves as possible, right? So I have guides. It's actually one of my, the two most popular pages on my websites are guides for men and guides for women. Those are the two most popular pages on my website. And when people book the session with me, I send them the guides, so they have the guides before they even like come to the studio. And so this is like a preparation process. I think with Google Ads, some kind of deal, or not even the price, but maybe include extra photo or something like that, or offer, like something that I'm thinking of, I'm going to be doing it soon, is to update the LinkedIn header for them, to help them design, the LinkedIn profile for them. So this is like extra value. So basically, you have to think about like some extra value that you can add, so that they're more entitled to, like, do something different than what other people do, and this way you'll get attention. Because a lot of people, when they do headshots, LinkedIn is one of the ways they're gonna show the photo, right? Even if they need for websites or whatever, LinkedIn is always okay. I'm gonna update my LinkedIn profile as well, right? But then you see so much that like they put the profile, but like their header is still crappy. So I'm thinking of like doing some, designing few templates, and then just basically put it together, based on the colors, etc. So I can, so basically that it will be easy enough, but it will provide good value to them. So anytime, any offer that you do, for the Google Ads, there must be an offer, right? You cannot just say, you cannot just go, because I've seen that as well, that people do Google Ads. They even have a landing page, but the thing they want people to do on the landing page is to book the session. And then they're concerned, like, well, people don't book the sessions. I'm like, no, they're not gonna. There may be some people that book, but there's a very small percentage. Most of the people are like, they're thrown off. It's like, okay, you want me to already book it? I don't even know who you are. Like, let me check. Let me compare you with other people, and then you lose them, right? Because they're not gonna. And then there's no way for you to follow up with them, because you don't even have their information. There's no way for you to call them and ask them, how can I help you? Because they didn't provide you the information, to contact them.
So when they come to your landing page, what's this logical next step that you guide them to to take?
It's always the above the hero section. So it's like the above the fold, right? So the first thing that when they see this is, I would say, 80% of what people read. If you don't have a good hero section or then you're not going to convert on your landing page. So you have to make sure that they feel they came to the right place. This is that you do what they want. They're looking for. Whatever your landing page, whatever you offer on this matches the ad that they just clicked on, right? And so like if you advertise Google, about a headshot session, and you go to the page and it talks about event photography and the other stuff, blah blah, it just doesn't map, right? But if you advertise event photography, you should have an event photography page, right? If you advertise headshots, then your page should be just for headshots. If you have a specific campaign just for real estate agent headshots, then your landing page should be for real estate headshots. You should define how you helping real estate agents, right? So the header should be that you're the experts, you're the right, that they came to the right place, and then what is the value that you offer, right? It has to be very clear, what the value is, and then there should be only one button, in the header, then either the form should be already on the hero section, or the button to pop up the form to give you the information, and that's it. And then the rest of the page, it's additional information. So you can have an FAQ, you can be about you can have the social proof, so like reviews, the benefits of everything, your process, what are the steps, what are the features at the end, what the features are, like how it works. And yeah, that should be pretty straightforward. And then at the bottom of the page, I usually put the section is called too busy to read. So basically, a lot of people just what they do is just, actually most people just read the header, but the next percentage of people, I don't know exactly what's the exact percentage, but they all scroll all to the bottom to see what's there. And then I have in the bottom actually a section called "Are you too busy to read?" Here's the snapshot of everything that I just on this page, and then it's the same, but the action is still the same.
So the action is at that point to, like, let's say, download a guide or
to provide the information, right?
Yeah.
And then once they provide the information, then you send them the whatever you promised them to send, or you send them the discount code, or you tell them, if you offer, for example, what do you call it, like extra photos, then you tell them, like this is how to schedule a session to get the extra photos.
That's actually interesting. Okay. So basically, creating a book the session now button on the landing page then might not necessarily be the most effective way of going about it.
It's the least effective.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah. Never, ever have book now.
That's very interesting, because that's so counterintuitive in many ways.
Exactly, right? Because remember, even like when I mentioned LinkedIn, right? It's you don't ask for sale on the first message, right? The same here. I don't ask them to buy anything at this point, right? Because if I ask them to buy on the first step, the chances are they're not going to do it, right? I mean, there will be some people that will do it. They will love what they see, but big percentage of people, majority of people will be turned off by this. Because I'm not committing yet, but if you receive it's like, oh, what do I, well, I'm going to get a discount code. Okay, whatever, or I'm going to get the guide, or I'm going to get some extra photos here. So let me see. I mean, what am I risking? I'm not risking anything at this point, right?
It's a really interesting concept, just generally speaking, because again, intuitively what you would think is like, okay, well, you put a Google ad up, and you create a landing page, and on a landing page people can book your session. That's sort of what instinctively that's what you would think.
Yeah, when you run the Google ads, or any ads really, is to generate leads, not to get bookings.
Right.
Yeah. Then once you get the leads, then the next step is to convert the leads into bookings.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed that clip, then press here for the full episode in glorious Technicolor. Hey, and don't forget to subscribe.